Well, hello. Title card is up, and we should be good to go here. Um, as people are getting logged in and checking equipment for this live stream, should be Mark's biography of Jesus of Nazareth. If you would like to leave a comment while I'm getting set up about your opinion of this Greco-Roman biography, go ahead, put in the comments. Any questions, comments, snide remarks, I will try to get to during the stream itself. If I'm unable to answer the stream, I will get back to your question in the next one. Have you ever looked at Mark's biography of Jesus of Nazareth from a literary standpoint? Period. That's what's going on in this live stream. Set that off to the side. All right. Well, hello, people. So I'm Timothy Holt. I'm the host of 90 and Out. This is Building for the Kingdom one brick at a time. And we're live in my home office. Today, we are going to be building Fox's Dumbledore's Phoenix. It's a Lego model. Just a disclosure, Lego is not a sponsor of this live stream. I just enjoy building with their sets to keep my hands busy. Otherwise, I tend to talk with them. Also, quick shout out to one of our partners, Holt Helps Readers with Diane Holt. She is the author of Timeless Treasures right here. It is one of the supplemental reading material for our biblical literacy program that we are developing in concert with 6 Points Church and Pastor Brian Snyder. So if you'd like to pick up your copy of this, let me know. There's also a link in the description. Then the other thing is I'm super excited about this. As frequent viewers of 90 and Out probably know, I have a collection of Bibles, quite a few Bibles. They're all different. No two of them are the same. And a couple of days ago, Pastor Brian Snyder gifted me this Bible right here, the Jeremiah Study Bible by David Jeremiah and Worthy Publishing. This particular one is in the English Standard Version. Full disclosure, this will be my first copy, physical copy of a ESV Bible. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I've never actually pulled the trigger and bought one for myself. So thank you, Pastor Snyder, for this beautiful gift. It's very nice. Initial thoughts as we get started with this live stream. This is a beefy boy, all right? I mean, it's stout. The dust cover is nice. One thing I will give the publisher some credit for. Dust covers are one of those things they usually get taken off and put in a drawer somewhere, which is fine. But this dust cover is identical to the actual cover. And I think that's really cool. I really like that. Other books that I have with dust covers haven't been that way. They've got a basic plain color, no graphic cover to them. And the dust cover is the bright, shiny, attractive thing. So that's pretty cool. I do like that. Dr. David Jeremiah captions this particular printing with what it says, what it means, and what it means for you. And that is going to stand in stark contrast to our biblical literacy program that Diane Holt, Pastor Snyder, and I are developing, because we don't want you to take our word for what Scripture says. We want you to read it for yourself, and we are taking a literary approach to the ancient texts rather than a theological one. But that's all right. I don't mind. Most study Bibles, actually all of them I own and have looked at, are taking a theological or doctrinal view of the text, with the exception of the one-year chronological, not the 1 year, the chronological Bible by, I think it's Tyndale Publishing. It is not on my shelf behind me. That one takes a archaeological and chronological approach to the text. Very different indeed. So, as with the other Bibles that I review on 90 and Out, I will be using this Bible as my primary reader and study Bible for the next month, at least 30 days, to get a good feel for it. And then I will be putting together a video review and rating it with a star rating like I have with the other texts, other printings. Also, so we'll set that off to the side, might pull it out later in the stream today. And we'll put the dust cover back on it too, because why not, right? Most of the time I will take dust covers off and do what a lot of people I know do, and that's put them in a drawer somewhere. So we'll put the dust cover back on. And if you have ever seen this, have any experience with it, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Hello, Diane, Dorothy. Sorry, Dorothy. I misread that. Dorothy. Yep. Shout out to my lovely wife, Dorothy. She is the one who gifted me this set for the live stream. So very nice. By the way, I am not a Harry Potter fan. I'm not familiar with them other than what's in the public zeitgeist. I don't think I've watched any of the movies straight through, and I certainly have never read any of the books. So, if you know who foxes is. Clearly a bird of some kind. Feel free and put that in the comments too. But it is a beautiful Bible, the Jeremiah Study Bible. Just first glance, 30,000-foot overview. It is beefy. I'm definitely looking forward to getting into it and reading from it. Again, it's my first English Standard Bible print in printed form. I've used the ESV before in digital form, but this is my first printed copy. So I know it's quite popular, that translation, so that's going to be nice to dig into that. Probably be using it pretty heavily with the Mark study that I'm working on, which is the main topic for this stream. So let's crack open this box, clear some space. And again, if you're interested in the Timeless Treasures Bible Outline by Diane Holt, please let me know and check out the link in the description. It is full of acrostic poems covering every book in the Protestant Bible. Really nice little handbook. Actually, before I get started on this, let's talk about one other thing. Thank you. I need to give a big thank you to everyone who went to Bricklink and voted for one of our sets in their designer program series 11. Voting has ended, so now it's the wait and see. Okay. Over the next couple of weeks, the organizers of that contest are going to be reviewing the different sets and looking at the votes and the comments and all that good stuff, and then announcing 5 winners. We have 3 submissions this time. The Family Fun at the Cabin on the Lake, which is a beautiful set in my opinion. It's definitely my favorite of the 3. The Mini Restaurant with Pedestrian Roadway is in micro scale, works well as a model. Both of those have submitted before but did not get selected. And then new this time is a, hold that thought. What is that? Sorry, something on the floor. As I was saying, new this time is a Fire and Ice Dragon set. So it's 2 dragons, definitely high fantasy. One is a fire dragon, looks like a flying fire ant on steroids. And the other one is a ice dragon. It's short and tanky, still flies. Both have shooters in them, thumb shooters, finger flick shooters, and minifigures. Pretty cool designing those. That was a lot of fun. If you're interested in them, let me know. They will be on Rebrickable if they are not selected for Bricklink's designer program with Lego. The instructions will be available on rebrickable.com. You can check out some other builds, including this one right here. This is too small of a set for the designer program. They're looking for bigger sets than this set. However, if you are interested in the instructions to this set, you can go to Rebrickable and type in 90 and out, and it will pull up all of the mocks, my own creation, for the channel. So you can check this one out. It is a airboat, twin engine airboat, or twin fan airboat. It does accommodate 2 minifigures, which is pretty cool. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know and head over to Rebrickable. I'm not sure if I have a link in the description or not. I'll have to look. But also have like these little quick builds for ATVs over there. So I would like to start transitioning to my own sets as I'm able to and build those with the live stream. So I like Lego's official sets, but nothing like your own, right? So let's get into it. And all right, I'm gonna rant for a minute. Rant incoming, right? Lego, what are you doing? So someone at Lego thought it was a great idea to try to reduce their carbon footprint, according to their own literature, by taking the plastic bags that were super easy, super simple, and cheap, and you could see what was inside as well, and replace them with these heavy paper ones. Because apparently, according to the executives over at Lego, these paper bags are less wasteful than the very thin plastic bags that they were using and have been using for like decades. Well, maybe not decades. Yeah, I think over 2 decades, actually. Those plastic bags. They went with these heavy paper bags. Yeah. Not sure why. I'm going to be honest. I like the plastic bags much better. They are not as cumbersome. They're not as heavy. And quite frankly, they take up substantially less space in my trash can. I know. For claiming to reduce waste, from my perspective, seems to increase it. Also, I'm going to be hard-pressed to believe that these paper bags are less expensive to produce than those really thin, essentially sandwich bags that are that are heat sealed. But hey, I'm sure somebody in an office somewhere did a bunch of studies. Because there's even still little tiny bags inside the bigger bags. I don't know why I opened bag 3 first. Let's set that off to the side. We don't need bag 3 or bag 2 or bag 5. Hey, there's bag 1 or bag 4. Bag 1. All right, so been rambling for a while. The nice thing about the live streams is it gives me the opportunity to just kind of have some verbal diarrhea go on, right? Just kind of let it talk and spill out and let my thoughts run. So with biblical literacy, if you watched the last 2 weeks live streams, we started with Ruth, and when 2 weeks ago, then last week I discussed Jonah. Both of those are ancient Near East historical narratives. The first one is from the late Bronze Age, and the second one is from the Middle Iron Age. They are considerably different than Mark. So Mark's long title is The Gospel According to Mark. However, we usually hear it shortened to either Saint Mark or just Mark. Just like Jonah is arguably my favorite minor prophet to read, and Ruth is one of my favorite books to read in general, Mark is handedly my favorite gospel, or Greco-Roman biography of Jesus. Now, let's talk for a minute about that word gospel. Gospel is not a theological term. It is a Victorian era English word It is a Victorian era English word meaning good news. That's literally all it means is good news. So another way of translating the beginning of the title of Mark is the good news of Jesus Christ, according to Mark. So just like with any text, we want to look at who the author is. Well, it won't take very long for you to go online, find somebody like Bart Ehrman from UNC Chapel Hill, or various other people claim that Mark is anonymous. Now, we don't know who the author is. We have no idea who the author is. We have no idea who wrote this grand, expertly crafted Greco-Roman biography of a first century Jewish rabbi named Jesus. Now, if that sounds kind of snarky, it's because it is. Yeah, it's because I am being snarky. They're going to claim that the reason we don't know, we have no idea who this author is because it is internally anonymous or formally anonymous. Not former, but formally anonymous. And that's kind of a problem if we actually look at the book. That would be like saying J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, see what I did there, is formerly anonymous because there's nothing in the text of any of the books that says J.K. Rowling wrote these books. Now, I've heard people push back on that analogy saying, hey, she's writing fiction, but these same skeptics, these same people, like Bart Ehrman, will claim that this is fiction. These are works of fiction. So if they're claiming they're works of fiction, I think it's fair to compare them to other works of fiction. Now, truth be told, full disclosure, I don't think they're fiction at all. I think they're Greco-Roman biographies. I think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are writing Greco-Roman biographies of a first century Jewish rabbi named Jesus of Nazareth. However, if we're going to use their argument and actually look at their claim and flush it out, we need to actually look at their claim. And the claim is that this is fiction, legend more specifically, that developed over a long period of time and therefore not actual history. Well, that would put it in the same category as, say, Harry Potter, right? As far as from a literary standpoint, right? It's fiction. Or the Odyssey or the Iliad, right? So if it's in that same category of fiction, if we have the two big categories, fiction and nonfiction, and they're putting these in the fiction category, then I think it is fair to take their same criteria and apply it to other fictional works, like the Odyssey, or the Iliad, or Beowulf, or anything written by William Shakespeare. And if we do that, you're going to find that their arguments don't have much muster to them, okay? So Tolkien, R.R. Tolkien, is credited with writing the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Lord of the Rings. Excuse me. Lord of the Rings, high fantasy series, obvious fiction, but it's written by R.R. Tolkien, or at least that is the claim. Hold that thought. Just dropped a piece. There we go. All right, so that is the claim, right? Generally speaking, we assume that R.R. Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings. High fantasy series, right? Definitely Christian inspired, though, even according to R.R. Tolkien. Oh, that's cool. That's pretty neat. How do we know R.R. Tolkien wrote it? Well, the first way we know R.R. Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings is his name is on it by R.R. Tolkien. So I'm going to grab that ESV Bible here. By the way, I don't speak or read Greek well at all. All right. So I'm going to rely on English translations. In this case, I'm going to get my first taste of the Jeremiah Study Bible in the ESV right now, live with you. We're going to turn to the very beginning of Mark. Okay, very beginning of Mark. There it is. Okay, so this particular printing has a title page for each book, which is pretty cool because the Bible is not one giant massive book. It is a collection of individual books and writings. So it's really nice. I am going to give them credit here. I really like each book having its own title page, just like we would see in other collections of writings, like, say, the complete works of William Shakespeare. So that's pretty cool. They have the short title right here, Mark. They also have, I don't know if you can see it on camera there, right up on Mark there, right there. That is the Greek beginning of Mark, because that's what it says, okay? So, and that's pretty neat. So, if you had to take a guess on how many copies, ancient copies of Mark in Greek we have that has the beginning or the end, because that's where we would expect the author's name to be, right? Either at the beginning or at the end. How many of those do you think are anonymous versus how many claim to be Mark? I'll give you a minute while I continue, okay? You can go ahead and Google it if you want. You can, look it up on your search engine of choice. You can even ask AI. Sure, why not? I'm not an AI person, but generally speaking, but go ahead, look up how many Greek manuscripts that have the beginning or the end of the gospel according to Mark, and either claim that someone else wrote the book or are anonymous. Okay. All right. Did you go ahead and do that? All right. What'd you find? We do have some viewers watching, so if you don't want to comment, that's fine. This stand looks pretty neat so far. Okay, that's... Oh, that locks that in. That's cool. All right, suspension done. It's 0. Okay. Every single ancient Greek manuscript that has been found that contains the beginning or the end of the gospel according to Mark credits Mark as the author. They either say just Mark, or it says the Gospel according to Mark. Yeah, all of them. Now, there are a bunch of manuscripts that are pieces, okay, that do not, like P52, they don't have the beginning of Mark or the end of Mark. So we would expect them not to have the title, okay, or the author, because they're in the middle of the book. All right, so that is the stand. That's kind of neat. Not gonna lie, that is a pretty neat stand. I do like that. So we're gonna set that off to the side. Just put it over there. And we need bag 2. So if all of our manuscripts, if every copy we have in the original language has Mark credited as the author, I think it's reasonable to assume a guy named Mark wrote it. Back to Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, if every one of the copies we have of either of those 2 book series says J.K. Rowling or R.R. Tolkien, respectively, wrote that book, it should be reasonable to conclude that is who wrote the book. I know that should seem obvious, right? But people like Bart Ehrman and other skeptics will still claim that we have no idea who wrote the Gospel according to Mark. And I'm just going, what? I don't have a PhD in ancient literature or anything, okay? I am going to seminary at Spirit and Life Seminary, really enjoying that. We're currently on an academic break between terms, but that's about it. And I'm pretty sure, regardless of what book I grab, if I have the beginning or the end of that book, I should be able to tell who wrote the book. And yes, this is at the heart of beginning to understand Mark as a piece of literature, as a Greco-Roman biography, not talking theology here or interpretation, but just recognizing it for what it is, like the type of book it is. We need to recognize who wrote it. And if we're going to believe those critical scholars that we have no idea who wrote it, when in fact we have really, really good evidence of who wrote it, then we can't read it for what it is, for what Mark wrote. If we're not willing to accept that Mark is in fact the author, then what are we doing? Why are we even reading it? That's how strong the evidence is that Mark is in fact the author of this book. Now, behind me, let me move that way. I have some books. I'm going to pick up a random book behind me, and we're going to determine who the author is. Ready? Really easy. I'm not even going to look here. Let's go with this one. What's this book? David Ravenhill, For God's Sake, Grow Up, A Call to Spiritual Maturity. Okay. I don't know much about this book, to be honest. I don't remember reading it. I've clearly had it for quite a while. It's probably one of the supplemental texts for one of my classes. But very beginning of it, we look at the cover. We want to know who wrote this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's either going to be, it's probably going to be David Ravenhill. Why? Well, because his name's right there. For God's Sake, Grow Up, A Call to Spiritual Maturity. Let's open the cover. What's the front page say? Now, there's his name again. Well, let's maybe there's something else here that's going to say it's someone else, or it's not actually him who wrote it. Huh. Copyright 1997. I have had this book for a while. There's a dedication page. Apparently it's dedicated to somebody's wife whose name is Nancy, and some daughters. There's a tribute poem. Oh, that's a psalm. Okay. Psalm 116. Psalm 16. Okay. This person has 70 years of ministry. Okay. There's some acknowledgments. Maybe that should shed some light on who the author is. Manuscript, finishing it, crediting an editor. Appreciation to Brad and Estel Jackson for their valuable help. Okay. There's a preface. What's preface? Preface doesn't say anything about the author themselves. It's definitely written by the author, though. Introduction. Talks about babyhood. And then we're into section 1, the actual book itself. All right. So if you had to take a guess, if you just saw this book on a shelf in a bookstore somewhere, all right, and you had to take a guess who wrote it, you would probably conclude pretty quickly that David Ravenhill wrote it. So let's put that button back. All right, let's grab another random book off of this shelf right behind me and see if we can figure out who the author is for this next book. All right, then we'll get back to building with this set. Let's go with this one. Oh, okay. I do remember reading this book. It's not a book I would recommend, but it is a book I own because I'm okay owning and reading books from people I disagree with. And I definitely disagree with this one. It is Cracking Da Vinci's Code. You've read the fiction, now read the facts. James L. Garlow, Peter Jones. And apparently 250,000 in print. So pretty popular book. Says on the back, Victor Publishing, nonfiction, Christian living, contemporary issues. All right, so if you had to take a guess, if you wanted to figure out who wrote this book, let's look right at the front here. We have two people's names, James L. Garlow and Peter Jones, right there. If we open it up, we have co-author of the best-selling Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye, saying he did not write the book, but he is endorsing the book. We have a title page, Cracking Da Vinci's Code. And then we have the second title page, just in case you missed the first one, I guess. Cracking Da Vinci's Code. Oh, and look, those two guys' names are there again. James L. Garlow and Peter Jones. I'm going to go out on a limb and say James L. Garlow and Peter Jones wrote this book. Let's get back to building with some Legos, shall we? And this Phoenix build. So who wrote the gospel or the good news according to Mark? If you need a minute, I'll give you a minute to figure it out. Okay? Because apparently people like Bart Ehrman and critical scholars in that group can't seem to figure out who wrote the book with a guy's name on it. and that guy being Mark. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's Mark. Mark wrote the Greco-Roman biography of Jesus of Nazareth that has his name on it. When all of the copies say, hey, this guy wrote it, it's a pretty good probability that he's the one who wrote it. Now, let's go a step further. Irenaeus claims Mark wrote it. Origen, yep, same thing. Actually, there is unanimous, and I do mean unanimous consensus that Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark up until the 20th century. There might have been a couple in the 19th century, late 19th century, but definitely in the 20th century is where we get people like Bart Ehrman coming into vogue, claiming we have no idea who wrote this book. Up until then, everyone agreed Mark wrote it. So, why is that important? I mean, we're 42 minutes into this live stream, and we haven't got past the title and the author of this book. Well, there's a good reason for that, and it's not just me rambling or ranting. It's because if you're willing to throw away the title and authorship of the book as being something that cannot be known with a high degree of certainty, and disregard the sheer volume of evidence for it, then you're going to hand wave away everything in the text itself. You're just going to hand wave it away. You will. You'll just hand wave it away. Now, you might be saying, no, I won't. I can still read this book with clarity and understanding for what it is without being certain on the title or the author. And I'm going to push back on that and say, no, you can't. Because of the sheer volume of evidence supporting the title and the author. And by sheer volume, let's be clear. Mark is the least popular of the 4 biographies of Jesus from the first century. He's the least popular. We have the least amount of copies of his writing. We have substantially more copies of Matthew, Luke, and John than we do Mark. And even with less copies relative to those 3, we still have so many more of Mark than other ancient writings that it's absolutely asinine, ridiculous to claim he didn't write this book or it was anonymous. Even worse, that it was anonymous, completely anonymous. That's how nonsensical that argument is. Okay, that is how nonsensical that argument is. So if you're willing to accept the premise that we have no idea who wrote the gospel according to Mark, the Greco-Roman biography of Jesus written by Mark, if you're willing to accept that premise, then you are able to hand wave away everything in the text. Nothing in the text will matter because you won't be able to know what any of it says. with any degree of certainty. And yes, I am that adamant about this text. Just like with any book that you pick up to read, the first thing you do is look at the cover. The first thing you do is you judge that book by its cover. I know the old adage, we should not judge a book by its cover, but we literally judge books by their covers. That's why this dust cover on this Bible is so pretty and well made. It's to attract your eye and attention. So you're like, ooh, that's something I want to buy and read. And with the Gospel according to Mark, to claim it is anonymous is absolutely ridiculous. All right, let's get bag 3. We already have it open. And that looks like the main body of our titular phoenix. So we'll set it off to the side. Now, to claim the second claim that I'm going to be addressing, which has to do with the literature, the literary approach to this biography, is that it is fiction. That even if we grant that Mark wrote it, he's writing fiction, historical fiction. Okay. Now, why is that nonsensical hogwash nonsense? Okay. Well, it's very simple. The genre of historical fiction as a writing construct did not exist in the first century. Were there fiction? Yeah. Odyssey, Iliad, they're works of fiction. We have evidence of works of fiction. The Greek tragedies, right? Euripides writes some. They're works of fiction. So to claim there was no fiction in the ancient world is not true. What there wasn't was historical fiction. And that is writings that claim that their premises, they're historical, but they're in fact fiction. That wasn't a writing genre, okay? Instead, the main genres of antiquity are Greco-Roman biography, histories, theological or philosophical treatises, tragedies, and comedies. Those are your big ones, okay? There's also poetry at that time as well. There we go. Oh, it's backwards. There we go. Okay. If you notice in that listing of genres, historical fiction is not one of them. C.S. Lewis, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the actual quote in front of me, but C.S. Lewis referred to this as during his life. Are we to believe that these four writers created an entirely new genre of writing and then everyone after that completely forgot about it until the 19th century? Now, you might be asking, well, what about the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary or the infant narrative? Or, yeah, those are all fiction, and they were known as fiction at the time, okay? People at the time knew those pseudo Gospels were works of fiction, they were fan fiction. And if you've actually read any of them, you will get that impression very quickly. These are fictional tales. But guess what sets Mark apart from those? He cites his sources internally. He's writing at the right time, 20 to 30 years after his subject has died. And he starts out with, I'm recording facts to the best of my knowledge. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as it is written in Isaiah the prophet. Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare in the actual narrative. John appeared baptizing in the wilderness and proclaiming the baptism of repentance and forgiveness of sins. Immediately, he says, hey, Jesus was baptized by John in the Jordan, right? Then he goes into the wilderness. He's tempted by Satan. And then we get the first dialogue of the narrative. And this was the ancients' way of citing a source. Your primary source was typically cited as the first person speaking and the last one, okay? That's Peter. All right, where is it? Saw Simon Peter, and Jesus said to them. So Jesus is the first one speaking, but Jesus is not his source because Jesus is dead. So who is his source? The first living person when he's writing, speaking, is going to be Peter. What have, where is it? Immediately they left, all right? Now I'm not seeing it. But it's Peter. Passing alongside, we have Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon. Notice he doesn't just say his brother, he actually uses his name twice. You'll also notice as reading through this that Peter is focused on more than anyone else outside of Jesus, indicating that he is Mark's primary source, not entirely his sole source, by the way, primary, not sole. We'll find at the end of Mark, there are three ladies mentioned with an empty tomb. Those three ladies are mentioned by name because they're his sources. I think you get the idea. We're approaching the 1 hour mark, it looks like. So enough harping on the authorship of Mark. You're probably sick of hearing me talk about that now. Let's get into the actual like writing itself here. All right, so that's gonna look like that. All right, there we go. And we need one of these right there. All right. By the way, thank you all for supporting this channel and what we do here at 90 and Out. If you're looking forward to the biblical literacy course getting completed, let me know. I definitely am, and I know my wife certainly is. It's taking up a lot of my time. Okay. So that piece is together there. If I have to go out on a limb, I'm going to say we're going to repeat it. Yeah, we are. Look at that. So Mark puts Peter in the action most of the time. By the way, biblical literacy class course, the videos are going to be a lot shorter. This is a live stream. This is just me rambling. All right. Pretty non-structured, in real time, talking it out and talk doing it that way. So if I say something that you find offensive, go ahead, let me know. If you want to help this channel grow, support it, hit that thumbs up, that kind of thing, that works too. But yeah, let me know. Also, I would love to hear if you have any contrary views. All right, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty steadfast in my position on the gospel according to Mark. I really like reading Mark. It's definitely a text I gravitate towards when it comes to the four biographies. Definitely Mark. All right. Mark is the action-oriented one. He's the Michael Bay of the first century biographers. There's enough dialogue to piece together the action scenes. There's three major set pieces in Mark, three major sets, if you will. You might get the impression by how Mark writes that all of these events take place over a 1 year period of time. That's just not true, historically speaking. They're spaced out more, but it's kind of like condensing a narrative into a 2 hour movie. You got to compress time, and Mark does that. He compresses time. These events take place over a 3 to 4 year period of time, not a 1 year period of time. Okay. In similar way to like a Disney princess movie, oh, they just met, and 3 days later, it's happily ever after, right? Clearly, from a storytelling perspective, Disney is condensing a lot of time simply to keep the narrative tight. And Mark is doing the same thing. Okay. This is not unheard of. Euripides does it. Tacitus does it. Pretty much every author ever will do that. Excuse me. Pretty much every author does that. All right. You have to in order to keep narrative flow. That is not making up stuff, by the way. That's just condensing time. The other thing that Mark is known for is what's known as a Markan sandwich. Actually, let's wait on that. Let's talk about the three major set pieces. So Mark contains more miracles or supernatural events than the other three biographers. He seems to focus on those more. Again, probably because he's a show, not tell kind of guy when it comes to his narrative. Where John and Matthew focus a lot on the discourse, the speeches of Jesus, the teaching. Mark is on the doing. What did he do? Calling the fishers of men. We're actually going to look at that in a minute. But he is definitely more focused on the doing, not the speaking. Okay. Now, that does not mean he doesn't have words of Jesus. He does. So, for example, in the first chapter, he says, flip page back. The time is fulfilled and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel. Again, gospel is a Victorian era English word meaning good news. When he's calling Peter and Andrew, James and John, he says, "Follow me and I will make you become fishers of men." Right? So they're short, they're punchy snippets of the words of Jesus. Be silent, come out of him is another one. Chapter 2, son, your sins are forgiven. And then there's more narrative flow. So I think you get the point. Mark isn't as concerned with the words of Jesus, the words in red, if you will, but more in the actions of Jesus, right? And there's three major set pieces in the gospel according to Mark. There is the events that take place in and around Capernaum in the region of Galilee. Yep, I was right. That does go right there. In the region of Galilee, that is our first set piece. We have the River Jordan. We have this Lake of Galilee. Just one thing though, throughout Mark, it's not mentioned as a lake a single time. It is a lake, by the way. Like, it's an actual lake, Galilee. However, this tips the reader off to Mark getting his sources from local people because he refers to it as a sea or the Sea of Galilee every time. Galilee is about 14 kilometers long and about 12 kilometers wide. So it's handedly a lake, not a sea. It's not even a very big lake. But if you're a local to that region, throughout the Roman Empire, the sea refers to the Mediterranean Sea, right? But in this particular region, the sea refers to the Sea of Galilee because they don't go to the Mediterranean Sea. That would be like us in Western Pennsylvania going to the Atlantic Ocean, right? It's not really a thing we do a lot. So that's why it's known as the sea. But it's actually, in fact, a lake. And that is set piece number one. That's your big set piece. The first one is the city of Capernaum, the villages and small towns around Capernaum, and the Sea of Galilee, okay? Or the Lake of Galilee. The second big major set piece is the roads going to Jerusalem in Judea to the south of Galilee. That would be the roads of Samaria predominantly. That is your second major set piece, is that traveling between those two locations. Okay. In the north, you have Galilee. In the south, you have Judea. The two major cities that Mark focuses on is Capernaum in Galilee and Jerusalem in Judea. Now, one thing to make note here okay, there we go, is neither of these cities are big cities in that area. They are important cities, but they're not large cities. So if Mark is writing and not getting his information from locals and eyewitnesses, he would have a very difficult time getting these areas correct. Like Cana, for example, which was about 150 people. He might get Nazareth. There's a whole list, I'm not going to go into them, of all of the place names that are strictly local to those two areas that people throughout the Roman Empire would probably have no clue even exist. An example of this would be Honey Creek Road, where I grew up in Radcliffe. Now, you can probably Google Garden City, right? And find where Garden City is in Hardin County, Iowa. I grew up between Garden City, Radcliffe, and Hubbard, like almost smack dab in the middle of that triangle, right? But if you Googled Honey Creek and Honey Creek Road in that area, you're going to have a more difficult time finding out where I'm talking about. However, if you go there and you ask locals, if they're older than I am, they're probably going to know what you're talking about. If they're not older than I am, they might not. Because Honey Creek Road was actually, the name was changed to 280th Street in the 1990s, okay, with the adoption of 911 access. And here, Mark gets these things correct consistently. But the major set pieces are those three major set pieces. In and around the Sea of Galilee, specifically the northern half of the Sea of Galilee with Capernaum, and okay, the roads going to and from Galilee and Judea. And then the third one is in and around Jerusalem in Judea. Okay, that's pretty neat. It's starting to look like a bird, I guess. Kind of. Oh, we missed some stuff here. Okay. Yeah. Should probably fix that before we continue here. Oh, I think I got this wrong. Go. All right, let's get this going here. All right, so profile that. All right, there we go. That's better. All right. Starting to look like a phoenix. And yep, we're going to rinse and repeat for the other side. All right. All right. So keep that setting in mind. I just dropped a piece. Hold on. Oh. So sometimes my toddler son is in the office and he likes to play with certain things. So there is one of the characters to a different build. which is, well, I'll put it right there for right now because I don't see that build. All right, so back to the set pieces. Mark takes 3 to 4 years of history of Jesus of Nazareth, his life, and condenses it into a short story narrative. Now, Greco-Roman biographies were typically between 1,200 and 1,600 words. Sometimes they were up to about 2,000 words long. And the reason for that is that would fit on one scroll. And it was important to the historians, the biographers, to have the entire story on one scroll. That way the reader wasn't left hanging, so to speak, with the outcome. Mark sits right in the sweet spot of about 1,300 to 1,350 words in Greek. Puts it right in the middle of the narrative. Now, in Greco-Roman biography formatting, historical narratives could have multiple scrolls. Short stories and poems typically were much shorter, with several of them appearing on a single scroll. However, biographies were almost exclusively restricted by the length of a scroll, usually in that 1,200 to 2,000 range. Okay. All right. And Mark fits comfortably in that range. It's currently set up with 16 chapter breaks, but those came much later in the Middle Ages for ease of study. Excuse me. So just like other narratives of this fashion, biographies, Mark focuses quite a bit of his content, about 25 to 30% of it, on the death narrative, meaning the events immediately preceding up to and including the death of his main subject, which is Jesus of Nazareth. That is not uncommon in Greco-Roman biographies. It's actually really common in those biographies. All right, we are done with bag 3, and look at that. Starting to look like a bird. That's pretty cool. We do have some extra pieces. We'll put them with the other ones. Grab bag 4. So the other part of that is this condensing of time and space. It's all about the action, okay? So Mark uses a ABA writing style. It's known as the Markan sandwich. I hinted to it earlier in the live stream. It's known as the Markan sandwich. Not because Mark is the only one to employ this writing style. He certainly is not. However, he is the most prolific at it. He uses this style to such an expert degree that it's fitting it's named after him. Okay. He wasn't even the first one to do it, but he is certainly the one who likes doing it the most. Okay. An example of that is right near the beginning of his narrative. We have Jesus healing a paralytic and preaching, right? And then he goes into this sidebar of calling Levi, the Matthew. Yeah. Matthew, Levi, same guy, right? And then he goes right back to this guy with a withered hand. Okay. There are other ones like this too. Let me find it here. His parables are set up in similar fashion with that. Uh, Jairus' daughter. Okay. So Jairus is a wealthy aristocrat. He's a Jewish leader, and his daughter is sick. Um, and Jairus is recorded exercising some faith, right? Um, we have Jairus' daughter. This is a pretty well-known Markan sandwich. All right. So we have Jesus had crossed again to in the boat to the other side, referring to the Sea of Galilee. Great crowd gathered. Jairus by name, leader of the synagogue, seeing him. He, meaning Jairus, fell at Jesus' feet and implored Jesus earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So she is deathly sick, and Jairus wants Jesus to heal her, right? So Jesus is like, cool, no problem. Let's do that. There's a large crowd. They're walking through Capernaum. They're headed to Jairus' house, right? Now, usually with storytelling, most people would conclude that story before moving on to another set piece or another event, right? Wrong. Right? Whoops. Mark doesn't do that because Mark has a focus and a plan for his narrative. He wants to take the reader on an adventure, and this is how he's doing it. So he uses an ABA format in his writing style. He's going to start with one narrative, interject a middle narrative, then conclude that first narrative with, by the end of it, the reader should go, "Oh, I see what you did there," right? And Jairus' daughter is a good example of that. We find out later that her name is Tabitha, okay? But so far, we don't know that. We just know he's in the road, there's a big crowd, and he's headed to Jairus' house. But before he gets there, Mark adds this event. Excuse me. A great crowd followed, and there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and she suffered under physicians. Mark gives some pretty detailed information about this lady, but not her name. She is anonymous. She's an unnamed woman, right? But it's clear she is not wealthy. She's not part of the elite like Jairus. She is socially, economically, culturally the exact opposite end of the spectrum, right? Jairus is in the elite group. He is a leader in the synagogue. He's an aristocrat, right? Conversely, this unnamed woman is scraping the bottom of the barrel for social capital, economic capital, all of it, right? She's got a medical issue concerning blood for 12 years, which makes her ceremonially unclean. She's a social outcast, right? She is in that group of people that the who's don't want anything to do with. She is in that group, right? So you have two very polar opposite individuals here. And what happens? She gets so close to Jesus that she touches his robe or cloak. Okay. So today that would be like touching someone's coat. You barely touch them. And she's healed. Mark says she's healed immediately. By the way, Mark uses straightway and immediately a whole bunch. Again, back to the action focus here, right? Her illness was gone. Immediately, Jesus noticed and turns and says, "Who touched my garments?" ESV says, "Who touched my garments?" Other translations say, "Who touched me?" or something like that. The idea is the same, right? He's like, "Somebody touched me." His disciples respond with, "There's people all over the place. What are you talking about? Of course, someone touched you. We're in the middle of a big crowd, moving through the crowd. Of course, you're gonna brush up against somebody, right?" Like, what? They're confused. And Jesus is like, "No, power left me, power went out." And we get this discourse between Jesus and this unnamed sick, poor woman. Okay? Now, as a reader, you're probably going, wait, I thought we were going to this rich guy's house who's sick. Well, we are. The chapter 5 ends with Jesus going into Jairus's house, telling the mourners, excuse me, and Jairus and his wife, "Hey, she's not dead." They're like, "She's dead." And he's like, "No, she's not. She's just sleeping." And then he takes her hand and says, "Tabitha, get up. Little girl, arise and walk. Arise." Talitha kume, or little girl, arise, get up. And she gets up. Now, so this is what we mean when someone says a Markan sandwich. This is what they're talking about. This is expert level writing. It is expert level writing, because he smashes these two seemingly unrelated events into a cohesive narrative that both bring the reader to the same conclusion, or at least should. And that is, Jesus cares about everyone, right? This first century Jewish rabbi that we're following has such a high moral character. Keep in mind, Greco-Roman biographies are intended to highlight the high moral character of their subject. In this case, Jesus of Nazareth. That while he is going to take care of Jairus and his daughter, he also takes the time to take care of this outcast. And what do these two have in common? Faith. They believe that he can and will meet their need. And they have similar needs, right? That's a Markan sandwich. It's a beautiful highlight right there, chapter 5. Don't take my word for it, by the way. The key to biblical literacy is not taking my word or anyone else's word, or in this case, David Jeremiah's word. Read the actual text yourself. Read from a multiple English translations if you don't read and understand ancient Greek. That would be great. Read and seek to understand yourself. All right. Okay. Fascinating. I missed a step, but that's all right. I can fix that. There we go. And there we go. Flip it over. Flip it over. All right. So that is an example of a Markan sandwich. Mark also uses that in his macro narrative as well. Okay, starting out with introducing who Jesus is as well, the Son of God. Well, okay, so Greco-Roman biographies would usually introduce their titular character by their family lineage or something notable that sets them apart from everyone else. And, well, how much better can you get than being Son of God? In this case, Yahweh, the God, right? And he concludes it in similar fashion, that bookending, okay? Bringing it all back to the reader. This is a expertly crafted Greco-Roman biography. I'm going to put my cards on the table right now. I believe that this is not just one of the great literary works of all time, but is in the 66 books and writings that make up the greatest literary works of all time. As far as Greco-Roman biographies are concerned, it's at the top. I'm a big fan of reading Mark, just casually reading it. You should read it straight through, by the way. It's really easy to take a verse out of context, and anytime someone takes a text out of context, it leaves with a con. So don't be that guy. All right. Those people are a dime a dozen. Don't do that. All right. Read it in context for what it is, because what it is beautiful in and of itself. All right. You don't need to add to it. You don't need to take away from it. Read the beauty of the craftsmanship. All right. Even if it's not your particular cup of tea, so to speak, for writing style, you're not really into ancient Greco-Roman biographies. This is a beautifully crafted written work, piece of literature. Absolutely amazingly written. The literary flow flows. When it needs to hit hard, it does. I have absolutely zero criticisms. Now, we're about an hour and a half into the live stream. It's a 2-hour live stream typically. We're going to address some other issues with this work. If you notice, I have not presented any theological positions on this text at this point in time. That's intentional. The course that Diane Holt with Holt Helps Readers and Pastor Brian Snyder at 6 Points Church and I are working on is intended not as a theological study or doctrinal study, but a literacy course, reading it for what it is, letting the text speak for itself, okay? So when we look at, say, 2 weeks ago in the live stream, we discussed the book of Ruth. It's an ancient Near East historical narrative centered on the romance between Ruth and Boaz. That's what it is. So we should read it as a historical narrative with an emphasis on romance. And the same thing applied with Jonah. Unlike the other minor prophets, Jonah is not a long discourse claiming to be words from Yahweh or a message from Yahweh. It is a historical narrative firmly grounded in the 7th century, around 760 BC, Mediterranean Sea, Joppa, and Nineveh. When you read the text as what it is, that becomes abundantly clear. Okay? Same thing here with Mark. Mark is a Greco-Roman biography centered and focused on Jesus of Nazareth, a first century Jewish rabbi from Nazareth, Galilee. We're going to stop talking about Mark for a minute and talk about this. We have a problem. Yeah, there's no way to attach our head. So I definitely missed something here in this construction, because this is the head, and there's no way to attach it. So definitely missed something. Okay. Well, it's not in bag 4, so interesting. So that's the end of bag 3, and it looks like this, except they have the wings out like this in the picture, which is fine. All right, it's right there. Yep. Okay, so bag 4 is right here. Oh, I see the problem. All right. There we go. So that, all right. Okay. The pink and the green one were backwards. So let's fix that right now. Okay, so the pink and the green one are backwards. And then we have our eyeball. So we have that set up, and that goes right there. That means this one goes right here. Okay. Which means these are backwards. Like so. And then that goes right there. All right, there we go. Now we've got it. There. All right, that's kind of neat. Not gonna lie, that is pretty neat. We've got a fully articulating head and wings. Definitely looks like a bird. We have one more bag left, however. That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, let's. We are not done with this one though, so let's keep going. All right. So I believe this is going to be our tail, it looks like. Yep. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of the Book of Mark? Have you read it straight through recently, just from beginning to end, without interruption? It should take the average reader an hour to an hour and a half to read from beginning to end. So I know sometimes I will listen to someone else reading. So think book on tape kind of thing. When I'm driving, but I also like just read it casually. So I will point out in this printing, David Jeremiah Study Bible, it is a red letter edition, which means when Jesus is recorded speaking, it's going to be in red print. And then also the subheadings are in red print. They're bold and red. So that visually looks nice. So put that back there. We have 5. We are going to get this done, this live stream. And this is so far our Phoenix. I think it's called Fox. Is that the name of the Phoenix? Where's the box? There's the box. Yeah, Fox. Fawkes. Dumbledore's Phoenix. I'm not even sure who Dumbledore is, to be honest. So, again, I am not a Harry Potter person. I'm not super familiar with the source material, but this is a pretty cool bird. I'm curious what box bag 5 is going to be, because this looks pretty complete. Yeah. If you do like Harry Potter and you are familiar with this particular bird, go ahead, put it in the comments. Let me know. Like, is it a main character in the series? I don't think it is. I think the series covers some wizards. I know it's a high fantasy series from Britain, and was a insanely popular movie franchise. But that's pretty cool. All right, let's open up box 5. We've got about 20 minutes left in this live stream. And we are going to use the last 20 minutes here to either field some questions if you have any, or going to look at the ending of Mark, because that is something that I think anytime we discuss the book of Mark as a book, as a historical narrative, specifically a Greco-Roman biography from the 1st century, we need to address certain manuscript differences. Okay, these are not contradictions. So defining some terms, a contradiction is where you have 2 premises that cannot be true at the same time. So for example, you cannot have a Ford Escort and a Dodge Charger as the same car at the same time. It's going to be one or the other. It can't be both at the same time. Okay. It can't be noon and midnight at the same time in the same location. Those are contradictions. Okay. Discrepancy is not a contradiction. A discrepancy is where you have a record that has different things, details. Okay. So we, as mentioned earlier in the live stream, we have a lot. There is a lot, and I mean a lot. There are literally thousands of ancient manuscript copies of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These 4 Greco-Roman biographies, more than any other biographies, like handedly. And out of those 4, Mark has the least, but still has hundreds of copies, which makes it really easy for scholars and translators to figure out what the original said, because they can compare and contrast all of those different copies, right? Some of those copies have, which is known as the critical text, text plural, have a short ending to Mark. Mark 16. I'm going to flip there, because if this study Bible by Dr. David Jeremiah is worth anything, it's going to address this issue in Mark. Okay. It's the big thing with Mark. So Luke, John, Matthew, there is little to no discrepancy on their endings. However, Mark, there are 3 main endings to Mark. They all contain the beginning of chapter 16. Okay. They all contain the beginning of chapter 16 up until verse 8. And then the differences are after that. Okay. So the critical text has that short ending. It ends at verse 16. The Textus Receptus, also known as the TR, has the entire chapter 16 all the way through verse 20. And then the third most common is in the middle, about verse 12. Okay. And then there's some very remote outliers that are elsewhere. Okay. Regardless of which ending you consider to be legit, the gospel according to Mark is still cohesive. Okay. Meaning Mark does not leave the reader on a cliffhanger to speak of. He doesn't. Oh, wrong piece. That's why it was weird. However, verses 9 through 20 work as an epilogue. Narratively speaking, they work as an epilogue in the same way as chapter 1 with referencing the scroll of Isaiah. Okay. Referencing the scroll of Isaiah at the beginning as a prologue. Verses 9 through 20 work as an epilogue. Okay, so you can accept them, you can reject them. That's completely at your discretion. I'm not going to judge you either way. Personally, I accept those 11 verses as authoritative. Could have been original. It doesn't matter to me. I treat them as an epilogue. because I believe that that's what they are. They're an epilogue, okay? Also, let me be clear. All of the ancient manuscripts that have the ending to Mark's biography of Jesus of Nazareth, have verses 1 through 8. Okay? They all have those verses. It what differs is where the end is. Okay? And even some of them that end at verse 8 still have a gap, an open part of the parchment, okay, of the paper. There's a blank space available and before going into Luke, okay? What is this supposed to be? I'm not sure what this is supposed to be, but hey, okay. Looks like a sword. I mean, it looks like a oversized sword. However, I don't know if swords are in the Harry Potter universe. Do they use swords in Harry Potter? If you're familiar with Harry Potter, let me know. And this bird called Fox, do they use swords? Because I thought they used like wands and wizards and stuff. But I'm not a Harry Potter guy, so this definitely looks like a very large sword to me. Yeah, definitely looks like a sword to me. All right. So back to the ending of Mark. If you, I'm going to give the editors of this printing credit. Like I said, if you open up a Bible to Mark and there is not some indication here, it might not be a very good printing, or it just doesn't have any reference material. Okay, I do have one copy. I do have one copy right here of Mark that does not have this indication. It's this one right here. It's the Bible, the New Testament, white letter edition. Very beautiful. Looking forward to getting the Old Testament 2-volume set of the Old Testament like this from this publisher. Just haven't done it yet. Okay, but if we go to St. Mark, they use the shortened the Gospel according to St. Mark for the title. And if we go to chapter 16, the end, they have all 20 verses here, but they have no indication at verse 8 that there is any differences, okay, in manuscript evidence. That's intentional on this publisher's part, because there is no references whatsoever in this entire printing. None at all. There's not even a reference to the publisher's name, okay, in the entire printing. It is the King James Version, New Testament, text only. So if the King James included it, it's included. And it is word for word the King James Version, 1611, only, with nothing else. Nothing else. So that's why the titles are the long titles. The Gospel according to St. Matthew, Gospel according to St. Mark, the Epistle of Paul, the Apostle to Colossians. Because if you go to 1611 copy of the King James Version, that's what you're going to see. There's no references. There's no letter to the editor. It is strictly the text and nothing else. So I would not expect this footnote, this indicator in this printing, because that's not what they're doing. Okay. It's the only copy I have that does not have an indication at the end of mark concerning discrepancies. By the way, if you go to other King James Bibles, like this one, which is a King James Thompson Chain Reference Study Bible, in the King James, and we go to Mark 16. This is also King James. All right, I know I'm emphasizing that. Same translation, but different printing. It has an indication at verse 8. Okay, right here is verse 8. And then if we go into the side margin here, where all of the footnotes are, it says that there is a discrepancy here, of some kind. All right, and then gives a number, and that references in the back in all of the references. Okay, and you can at your leisure find that if you want. All right, but there's an indicator. Okay, so yes, the translators of the King James Bible in 1611 were aware of the manuscript discrepancies. They're just going with the TR, the Textus Receptus, which overwhelmingly includes verses 11 through 20. All right. But if we're going to be looking at this as a piece of ancient literature, we need to address that elephant in the room, so to speak. Now, does that take away from the reliability of the text? No, it doesn't. Not at all. If there were not discrepancies, that would be problematic. If they were all identical, word for word, no differences, that would be extremely concerning. All right. The reason these discrepancies exist is the same reason that Grammarly exists, right? It's the same reason that college professors find discrepancies and errors in college term papers. It's because human beings are fallible. We make mistakes, and ancient scribes hand copying word for word, jot and tittle of these ancient texts made mistakes. There's spelling errors, there's grammar errors. If there weren't, that would be very concerning. And I do mean very concerning. This looks like a hat. Is this, what was it called? In Harry Potter. They have a special hat that the students wear. Sorting hat. Is this the sorting hat? So does the sorting hat and this bird have something to do with each other in Harry Potter? I don't know. I don't read Harry Potter. It's not my thing. All right. But it looks like a big hat, and it has a grumpy face on it. Is the hat like talk? Does it talk? Does it have a grumpy face? I don't know. You tell if you are familiar with Harry Potter. Let me know. Is this like accurate to the source material? And then it looks like we have a little baby bird that we're going to build here. And I think that's gonna be the build. It looks like is this little baby bird. we're starting to run out of pieces. So good use of pieces. Yeah, good use of pieces. And that is the baby bird. So we do have some extra pieces here. We're going to put them with our other extra pieces. Some really nice extra pieces too, like these pieces right here. I'm not sure what they're called. They're definitely usable. Flats are always usable. So that's nice. All right. So real quick before concluding this stream, Mark ends the actual narrative with 3 women going to the tomb where Jesus's body was put. Okay. When the Sabbath or Saturday had passed, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him, meaning Jesus. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb, and they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back, and it was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go and tell his disciples and Peter." That's the bookend with Peter, okay? As the primary, indicating the primary source, not the only source. "That he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. And that is the short ending of Mark. As I mentioned before, verses 9 through 20 work as an epilogue. Okay. So who are the witnesses that Mark is relying on for this account? Well, it's 3 women. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome. We have good indication here that they're the witnesses. They're those sources. All right. So in closing, we're right at the 2-hour mark. All right. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Mark's Greco-Roman biography of Jesus of Nazareth? Is it a masterpiece? I'm going to claim it is. It is a masterfully crafted Greco-Roman biography. I have absolutely zero internal or external justification to believe otherwise. However, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to read it and come to your own conclusion. All right. What do you think? And then what do you think of this build? Last build was this right here. It's Cinderella's dress. Super cool build, by the way. Really like this play feature. This was last week's build. Very nice build indeed. Also, I don't know the name of the mouse in the Cinderella universe, but right there is is the short stubby mouse. Super cute. All right. I'm going to need to find a place on one of my shelves for this build. This is Fox, Dumbledore's Phoenix. It's a cool bird. I definitely like the beak and the head feathers. It's a nice build. I think it could be expanded a little bit more with a few more pieces. Might do something with it. Overall, nice build. I have no idea what this is supposed to be other than a sword. If you know, let me know. Otherwise, it looks like a giant sword to me. There is a little baby bird, which is super cute. I'm going to stick him right here underneath the big bird. And then there's this grumpy-faced hat thing. It was fun to build. I like it. Really neat. need to find a home for it on one of my shelves. Let me know what you guys think. Ways you can support the channel. Links in the description. The Timeless Treasures Bible outline by Diane Holt. That would be great. It's a great resource for anyone who wants to read these ancient texts. Likes, shares, comments, all the social media stuff would be great. And I'll see you next week. Also, if you are looking forward to biblical literacy, BL 100 Introduction to Biblical Literacy, let me know that as well. We are working on principal photography and script writing and things of that nature for phase 1, which is Ruth, Jonah, Mark, Titus, Philemon, John's open letters to the ancient world. There are 3 of those, and Jude covered in phase 1. So let me know that. And I'm Timothy Holt. This is 90 and Out, where we build for the kingdom, one brick at a time. May God bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. God bless you.